Hi, and welcome to In the Field, a series of short interviews with artists and musicians from the San Francisco Bay Area and beyond. I'm talking with Josh Allen, who's going to be performing at the 9th Annual Outsound New Music Summit, happening July 22nd at the Community Music Center. And thanks for coming, and actually thanks for being here, Josh, and letting us come into your home and talk with you. I was going over a number of different questions and watching different interviews with artists, so we're going to start with the most basic of all questions. When did you start playing music?
I think I started playing piano at some point when I was 6 or 7, and I believe that in 3rd grade I took my first wind instrument. That was recorder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that, and then at 9 I started playing the saxophone.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, what was one of your most memorable early experiences that sparked or influenced your desire to play? Though, like you said, you started out 5th grade, and do you remember what it was that brought you to wanting to just pick up instruments and play music?
Yeah, I mean, besides the fact that my family were all musicians or played music,
right.
I would go to the ballet with my mother and my father, and I would sit, we had front row seats, and I would stare down into the orchestra pit while they were warming up.
Oh.
And then during the ballet, I would just, say if it was at the Oakland, the Paramount, I would just listen to the music and stare at the ceiling, not really interested in the ballet at all.
Wow.
Yeah, and I also remember my mother was doing work, public relations work with Calvin Simmons, conductor.
Oh, right.
And I was fascinated by the way he could get the orchestra to do things. I mean, I didn't know that it was all written down, but that he had these huge hands, and he had no baton. And this fascinated me, so I would always want to go with her to see the Oakland Symphony Orchestra.
Wow. Okay. So that was around the 5th time.
I was 5, 6.
Oh, you were younger.
7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was before you picked up instruments.
Right. Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah. Well, that sure is a way to get influenced by large orchestrations and hearing all that sound. I suspect that's quite an experience, especially when you're very young.
Yeah.
Wow.
My father played jazz and classical growing up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and his brother was a great classical clarinetist. And,
okay.
Their mother was a great concert pianist.
Right.
Who gave it up when she married my grandfather. But
I see.
But there was this real basis in the family. I didn't really know that, but but music was encouraged.
So so you grew up in a musical family. On top of experiencing it on the outside, you were also encompassed by that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a family with financial means. I was an only child.
Right.
Anything I wanted to do, I was encouraged to do to the hilt. So yeah.
Okay. So when did you start picking up saxophone?
But that was when I was 9 years old.
9. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The band. I'd seen Sonny Rollins play, and I thought it was fascinating, but he was huge.
Yeah.
And But when, and I thought he was like a spaceman of some kind, of
really?
Weird alien. But when I saw, I was at Cragmont Elementary, and the Columbus School band came up to play for Cragmont Elementary, and they showed off all the instruments and exactly what they did. I saw the saxophone, I saw the alto saxophone, and I was like, that's manageable. That's what I want, and
So Sonny Rollins was probably one of your first jazz experiences in that area?
Probably one of my first jazz experiences,
Yeah.
although I don't necessarily remember exactly what was played in my house.
Right.
There was a lot of different music.
Right.
Yeah.
What kind of music would be
Every
a typical day
Um,
when you were young, growing up?
my father was really into Dave Brubeck. My father was really into Oscar Peterson.
Right.
Then again, my mother really loved the Beatles, and she was also doing a documentary on the punk scene in the Bay Area.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and so I got to hear and know the Talking Heads before they were,
Okay.
famous. They were, I mean, they weren't really punk, but
Right.
on that scene.
On that scene right here.
Yeah.
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 So you had a wide range of musical influences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's pretty cool then.
Yeah.
So this was just on an ongoing basis, day to day, or
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. Wow.
I mean, my memories aren't that great, but I remember having a huge discography. And I remember that when I was 9,
Uh-huh.
I started buying vinyl albums, and I accrued a huge discography, and I was always listening to things.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So what would you say were some of the more poignant influences musically of your own creative process then, as you've grown into playing?
Do you mean as an adult, or what was I listening to as a kid?
Yeah, well, we talked about your earlier influences. So as you grew into playing saxophone at around age of 9, and then moved it further down the line, was there any particular people or styles or other influences that affected your creative process that you used to develop your sound and your performance as you've grown down over the years?
Yeah, I was pretty much done listening to pop music by the time I was 12, and I was listening to a lot of big band jazz and a lot of modern classical music. If not modern classical, is Shostakovich modern classical, or is he romantic in the
Right.
20th century?
Right.
I slowly started, I would say, listening to Coleman Hawkins
Okay.
and listening to Ben Webster and listening to Lester Young and really devouring those players. But I would say the first really important player for me was Dexter Gordon.
Okay.
Yeah. And then from Dexter, I was able to access John Coltrane.
Right.
And then and this is still while I'm like 13, 14.
Right. So you have some early influences that have stayed with you over the years.
I guess. I mean, you tell me. I mean, I don't know. In discussions people have had about what they hear recently, I don't necessarily hear the same things other people hear.
Right.
But I got to Coltrane, and then I got to Sonny Rollins again around the time I was 16.
Oh, okay. So you kind of came back full circle in a way over a period of 7 to 8 years.
I don't know that it was huge influence. I just know that early on I had an awareness that this was an expressive instrument, and I was ready. I think that there were certain things that put me off initially about his playing, that when I hear him, still sometimes put me off, even though I'm in love with all other aspects of his playing.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, do you have any non-musical influences that have affected your creative process, like artists, painting, sculpture?
Oh yeah. I mean, you go out. My father was an architect. Everything was about visual. I was surrounded by visual art and by sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
I think that my music has more to do with Jackson Pollock and Mark Rothko than it does with Charlie Parker.
I see. Yeah.
Although I still practice, out of the Charlie Parker Omni book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Ben Barker has had his works, his music has had some support for your creative process.
Well, I think it's like if you're a trumpet player, you use Arbin's trumpet book, and I think if you're a sax player, you deal with that. You use the Charlie Parker Omni book, and for me, Jovial Chord Studies for Saxophone Volume 2. I think really those are
I have a recollection of that myself.
And a book that I rarely worked out of, but a lot of people worked out of, was Oliver Nelson's book.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't use